I was in the middle of a video and my job called me. I hate when that motherfucking shit happens because I'm on call today. But anyway, I was coming through talking about the movie Candyman. Okay? Evidently, maybe the spirits didn't want me to say some of the things that I said in that first video. So I'm going to keep it simple. I was watching the movie Candyman, and some things started, really sticking out to me. Now, I'm old. I'm 40. Okay. That movie came out in the early 90s. Okay. Now, back then, I was just a kid looking at a scary movie, and I didn't really peep the hidden subliminal messages that are in it. But then there are subliminal messages, and then there are messages that you're just not supposed to pick up on. And a lot of times I pick up on those too. When I looked up the information about the actor who I adore, who plays him, his name is Tony Todd. I adore his talent, and he was a fine piece of motherfucking hot chocolate back in the day. Tony Todd, yes, bitch. He was a fine piece of hot chocolate back in the fucking day. Okay? Tony Todd, when he played Candyman, honey, I would say his name 5 times in the mirror. He could appear behind me any motherfucking time. Shit, I don't care. He's 6'5", big, tall, handsome black man like that. Bitch, shit. I would love it if I shit. But anyway, that's another story. So I was examining his energy, and I peeped, some things. Candyman, that entire character, the energy that it was based off of was the energy of Osiris. It was based off of the energy of Osiris and Horus and Ptah and Asar, aka Osiris. And what's interesting is that Tony Todd, he is what's the word I'm looking for? He represents those energies. He is those energies. Every one of those energies I just named, those are the energies that he is a form of. He is a form of Ptah. He's a form of Amun, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's a form of Amun as well. I think he's a form of Amun. Let me see. Maybe I'm mistaken about Amun, but he's definitely a form of Ptah. He's a form of Horus, the elder, and he's a form of Asar, which is, the same thing as Osiris. And Osiris is the Lord of the dead, the Lord of darkness. Okay? And there are other names that Osiris goes by as well that I'm not going to get into, because I don't call them, the same names that everybody's been calling them for 5,000 years. I have other names for a lot of these deities that I've created. I've even created some deities of my own that will fuck people up if need be. I'm just saying, okay? So I was peeping, his energy and looking at the numbers that connect him to certain deities. And what I started to realize, and I'm going to say this too because I'm going to throw this in there. I used to be terrified of the Candyman movies, and that's the mind control, because they were trying to shut down an aspect of who we are in that movie. So they showed you a black man who was murdering and brutalizing people, but you have to remember, he mainly went after only white people. He killed a few black people here and there, but his main targets were white people. Now, the mythology of Candyman in the movie was that he was an artist. I believe he was a wealthy artist or something like that. I don't remember if he was a slave. I think he was. He wasn't, no, he was a slave. I'm sorry. He was a slave that was hired by this white man to paint his daughter's portrait. And because Candyman was a well, wait a minute, his character did come from a wealthy family according to the mythology. Okay, his family did come. He did come from a wealthy family, and he was an artist. Okay, now I'm getting it. Okay, Spirit just showed me something. Now I get it. Now I'm getting it. Now I'm getting it. Okay, I'll get into that in a minute. Spirits just showed me something as clear as day. I'll get into that in a minute. Just got a major confirmation about this. I see what it is now. So, according to the storyline, everyone should know Candyman was hired by this rich white man to paint a portrait of his daughter. Candyman fell in love with the daughter. Her name was Caroline. They had an affair. Father found out about it, had Candyman tortured and murdered. They cut off his hand. That's where he had the what do you call it? I can't think of it. Not sword. Oh God, I'm getting old. What do you call it? The goddamn hook. Yeah, the hook. Okay, that's where you had the fucking hook on his hand. And the townspeople smeared him with honey, and they allowed bees to torture him, and they stung him to death. You know. So after he died, physically, he came back because they couldn't kill him. He was a badass motherfucking nigga. That was a badass motherfucking nigga. And they shut that motherfucking energy down in that movie Candyman. Because that was a scary ass motherfucking nigga. But when they shut it down, they were shutting down an aspect of who we are as well. But now that Cthulhu is rising, that shit is coming back online. And that's why I'm making this video. Because what I wanted to say, I said all that to say this. Candyman, that entire story or mythology that they're saying is fictitious, Candyman was a real motherfucking person. Who the fuck was that motherfucking nigga for real? Because he kind of has some energy of like, he kind of has some of the Nat Turner energy as well. I see that in him as well, the Nat Turner energy. What I'm saying is that, and I remember hearing this before from Brother Panic when he talked about how there are a lot of black people, niggas that were revolutionaries and shit that we don't even know about, that we never even heard about because they hide their existence from us. And that motherfucking nigga Candyman, whoever that nigga was, whoever that person really was, what I'm saying is that that shit was not a fictitious movie. See, the thing is this, and what I'm starting to notice, a lot of the movies that they tell us are fictitious are really actual accounts. Yeah, they may change some of the details and, make it to fit, our to fit into whatever media arena that they may have or whatever the case may be. Y'all know what the fuck I'm talking about. They may change certain things around for dramatical reasons. That's the word I'm thinking of. But in actuality, a lot of these motherfucking stories, because they know the public is stupid, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but the public is stupid. We believe whatever they tell us. If they tell us, oh, this is based off of a true story, we believe it. If they tell us, oh, this is only fictitious, it's just a horror movie, we believe it. Just like that movie with Cicely Tyson called The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. That was not based upon a real person, come to find out. It wasn't. That was fake. That was fictitious according to them. But how do we know? See, how do you know that? How do we know? So Candyman, whoever that energy, whoever that person really was when they were alive, because I used to have dreams about that motherfucking nigga. I had dreams about that motherfucking nigga, and it used to scare me because I was going by what I saw In the movie, I was going by the personification of that character in the movie. I was going by that personification, not by what it really was, which was that nigga was a badass motherfucking revolutionary nigga, and they had to kill that motherfucking nigga and blot him out of history, block him out of history, so nobody would know who the fuck he really is and who he really was, because his energy was so motherfucking powerful that it kept coming back, causing havoc for these racist others, and probably for the Akuns that supported them as well. Because you notice the only black people that he killed were black people that were connected to people in the movie. He was only killing, like he killed that little reporter that was working with Helen Lyle, the character that Virginia Madsen played. He killed her, you know, he killed anybody that was exploiting his motherfucking story. There's a story behind that motherfucking shit. But whoever that nigga really was, and I do know that that was a real motherfucking person until I'm proven wrong. Candyman was a real motherfucking nigga. That was a real person. And he was a bad motherfucker, whoever the fuck he was. That was a bad motherfucking nigga. He was a bad motherfucking nigga, and he gave these motherfucking white racists a run for their motherfucking money in this institution we call America. He gave them a run for their motherfucking money. So they had to block him out of existence and out of motherfucking history. Now, let's go back to Freddy versus Jason back in 2003. Okay? Back in 2003. In that movie, in that movie, the townspeople of Springwood, you know, had blocked Freddy Krueger's name out of existence because they said if they don't talk about him, then he could not come back and harm people from beyond, the grave, because they killed him too. They killed Freddy Krueger as well. They burned him. He was a child killer, the character, according to the storyline. He was a child killer who murdered a dozen children on Elm Street and all that other bullshit, so they got rid of him. They burned him to death in his boiler room, and they got rid of that motherfucker. That's one thing about motherfucking white people. When you do something in their motherfucking community and they're not trying to hide it and they don't have anything to gain from it, they will take your motherfucking ass out. They will take your fucking ass out quickly. That's one thing about them. So they took him out. So in Freddy versus Jason, the townspeople, the sheriff, everybody, they had stopped talking about Freddy Krueger so he could not come back into the dreams of the children and kill them. Because he came back as a revenge thing as well, to kill the children. He was after the children. So when they killed him, he took on some dream demon's energy or some shit like that. We saw that in Freddy, in the final Freddy, Freddy's Dead. How he took on, that's how he got his power. Because Freddy Krueger was studying the occult and magic and shit like that before he became, the deformed, monstrous figure that we saw in the movie. And that was all symbolic of niggas anyway. The burnt face and, the sweater and lurking around seedy, places in the dark. That was all symbolically, used to program people's minds about black people, about black men any motherfucking way. You know what I mean? Freddy Krueger got turned into a motherfucking nigga when he went into the fucking spiritual realm. That's how he was able to come back and torment those white fucking children. But the point that I'm making is that the townspeople in Freddy versus Jason, in Springwood, after all of the years and after all of the murders of children dying mysteriously in their sleep, the suicides and all that bullshit, they decided the only way that they could get rid of that motherfucker was by not talking about him and blocking him out of motherfucking history. And that's the same exact thing that they did in real time to whoever the real character or the real person of Candyman was. That's what I'm saying. So my question remains, and I'm going to find out, who the fuck was Candyman? I was sitting here and I got a channel, something came through, and I said, you know what? That makes perfect sense. And I don't want to take it into the whole, Jesus Christ thing, but Jesus Christ and Horus, that's the same, along the same energy. You know what I mean? Because Jesus, Horus became Jesus. You know what I mean? So it's all interconnected. The character of Candyman is also a form of the Christ energy. He's also a form of the Christ energy. He's also a form of the satanic Luciferian energy as well. He was a figure that was trying to probably, fight fucking injustice. He was probably trying to stop a lot of bullshit that was happening that was wrong. He was probably trying to bring about balance and change. That nigga was Candyman was a revolutionary. Whoever the real Candyman was, he was also what people would call a Christ-like figure. Look at what they did to him in the movie. Look at how they tormented him in the movie. He came from a wealthy family, and a lot of people kept thinking that, Christ came from a poor family. No, if he was Jewish, he didn't come from no poor family. He came from a well-known family, a well, a wealthy family. Let's just say that. He was there to paint a portrait. I said portrait. A portrait of this rich white man's daughter. He fell in love with her, and they had a child, and he was murdered by the townspeople. Basically, a motherfucking lynching. That's basically what it was, without, the rope. Same thing if you really look at the story of Jesus Christ, that sounds similar to what they would do to a nigga. And I know Jesus didn't exist. I'm talking about the Christ energy and the different niggas who have come with that energy. The different niggas who've existed with that energy, who fought against motherfucking injustice, who brought down shit. So Candyman is also part of that Christ energy. The real Candyman, whoever the fuck he was, whoever the fuck that dude was, whoever that nigga was, if he was a man, could have been a woman, could have been a motherfucking woman. We don't know. Could have been a woman. That could be another motherfucking trick and distraction. It could have very well been a motherfucking woman. Because a lot of times what they'll do too is they'll show us images of men saying that, whatever. They'll show us images of men, and the story behind the story could be is that it was actually a woman, a black woman, who was the real revolutionary behind that. It could very well be, but we ain't going that far. We're gonna stick with it being a man because I sense masculine energy behind it. But whoever that motherfucking nigga really was, it wasn't just a fictitious movie created to scare people. Candyman really existed, and they blotted and blocked him out of history and existence because they don't want people tapping into that motherfucking energy. They don't want us communicating with that fucking energy or that spirit, whoever the fuck he was, because I've seen that nigga in my motherfucking dreams. I've seen that motherfucking nigga. That wasn't just no motherfucking movie created to scare people. It was much more to the story. And that's what I'm telling people. And I don't care who don't listen. I'm just saying it because I know what I know. Especially when they do it with black people. A lot of these stories and mythologies, in my opinion, are different elements of truth. There are always elements of truth in mythologies. And I'm not saying that, the Candyman figure was as in the dramatic, or was in that dramatic way that we saw in the movies. I'm not saying that. But there are elements of truth in every motherfucking thing. Candyman was a badass motherfucking revolutionary. He was probably a badass motherfucking interdimensional motherfucking nigga that they killed and they probably lynched. And then that nigga kept coming back and they couldn't fucking stop him. So they said, well, we'll do this. We'll stop talking about him and we'll blot him out of existence. You know, then they come up with the movie Candyman to put money in their motherfucking pockets, manifesting off of the melanin and all that bullshit. They came up with that movie knowing or thinking that the public would not suspect that this was a person who actually existed, whose blood was actually fucking spilled. Because they don't want us tapping into that motherfucking nigga's energy. They don't want us doing that because that nigga would come through and fuck shit up. That's why they blocked him out of history. That's why there's no memory or records of who that nigga probably really was. And can you imagine of all of the black men and black women who we don't know and who we never heard of, who were badass, spiritual, dominant forces, powerful forces that have transcended and elevated to higher vibrations and higher states of consciousness, you see. So who the fuck was Candyman? We all know that, it was a form of, Osiris. You can you can break down the energies and see that Osiris, Horus, and all that bullshit. You can break that down because the actor who played him, let me say it again, so you can understand how it interconnects and why I brought up the Christ energy and Horus. The actor who played him, Tony Todd, he is a form of Horus. He's a form of Horus, and he's a form of Ptah and Osiris. You see where I'm going? So they used that energy to tell that story because the original person, the person who, the real Candyman, whoever that was, the real nigga who was a revolutionary and a powerful motherfucking god, that motherfucking nigga, that motherfucking nigga was probably along the lines of those same motherfucking energies. You feel what I'm saying? Because Tony Todd, that's a bad motherfucker. He was the first, and he needs to get credit for this. He was the first black slasher, meaning he was the first black, he was equivalent to Jason and Freddy for black people. He was our first black slasher, and he needs to get, respect and his dues for that. I would really love to see a movie, Candyman versus Pinhead, because the same white man, Clive Barker, who created Hellraiser, he created the Candyman shit too. Okay, Clive Barker. Check that too. But I just wanted to come through and talk about that because I was looking at Candyman and I was saying, well, goddamn, something is there. It's something more to that motherfucking story. So they fill people's minds and they program people's minds with all this fear about that energy to shut it down so you won't ask any questions, so you won't tap into it. But I'm asking, who the fuck was Candyman for real? And I'm gonna get the motherfucking answer eventually, and when I do, I'm gonna come back and make a video about it. Because that was a badass motherfucking nigga, whoever the fuck that was. He was a bad motherfucking nigga. But anyway, this is the Occult View, aka Seer Grant, and I was just dropping through to talk about that. All right.